What is up, Nerf Nation? I'm Naptown Nerf, and today we're going to be testing and reviewing some products that go inside the Dominator, including the 40-round magazine. So let's see what this thing's got. Alright, you guys, so today we're going to be testing and reviewing a few worker products in the new Dominator shell, which I'm very excited about. There's going to be a lot of testing that I do with this shell with lots of different flywheel cages and different setups. So to start out, I felt like we should go ahead and test this out with a single flywheel cage. And since they sent me one here that is meant to accept those 40-round magazines, I felt like we would go ahead and try out this and go ahead and test out those 40-round magazines as well, because this is really the only appropriate cage I have to give that an adequate test. I don't know if they will work or not with a normal strife, sized cage, but my guess is they'll feed much better into something like this, which has a much bigger opening, as I said in my first look unboxing video. But Worker did send these along, and we will do this cage, and we'll go ahead and use these flywheels since they sent them along. And they also sent the dart guide to help with accuracy, along with some faux barrel that comes with that. That also comes with the blaster. So this one has aluminum, this one has some sort of like orange powder coating on it. I kind of prefer the raw aluminum look, but we will test that out. I'm not sure if I'll use this full length or not. I usually cut this down when I've worked with worker cages in the past, so I may try a cut down portion of this aluminum, because honestly you don't really want the guide longer than the dart that you're using. So this would be almost 2 dart lengths. So that's a little long, and you're just gonna lose FPS at that point and not really gain any accuracy. So I'll probably use a shorter portion of this. You just kind of cut it down to, a dart length as it leaves the flywheels. So that's that. We have our longer faux barrel that should work out when we're using just a single flywheel cage. And then this does come with motors, these worker motors. They're more generic motors, and I think these are a 3S 132 motor. I know they're 132 size, but I think they're a 3S motor, but I'm not 100% positive. But not too long ago, workerkit.com sent along the brand new worker motors, which are a much nicer motor, and I've been wanting to test these out, so I figured, why not? Let's test them today in this cage with this setup. Now, these motors are very strong. They have neodymium magnets in them. They have ball bearing motors, very similar to Fang Revamp motors or Krakens or Neo Hellcats. Those are all neodymium magnets with ball bearings, so that's really cool. These are very expensive motors, so they're gonna have to really impress me to make them worth the amount of money they are, more than a Fang Revamp or the Kraken motors. But we are going to give them a test. These also have a lot higher RPMs than those motors ran on normal voltage, or their intended voltage. These, I think, run around 43,000 RPMs, which is pretty darn high. Not sure what kind of torque they get, but hopefully they're relatively torquey, given that they have such a high stall current, which means you have to use a pretty big battery to run this, and probably a MOSFET. But we won't worry about that too much, since we're not going to be running too many darts through this thing. But we are going to be using these aluminum flywheels, so these are a little bit heavier than your standard flywheel, but not too much. They don't feel too heavy. So we'll throw those in there. They do send along some wiring and some switches, but we don't need any of those. And this blaster actually comes with this switch, which is really nice. They send along a bigger, beefier switch than, can fit into a swordfish. But this is only, I think, a 15 amp switch. So I went ahead and switched out the switch to a 21 amp Omron just to be safe there. This switch probably will work fine if you're running just, a normal single flywheel setup. But with these motors, these are pretty high current, so I felt like to be a little safer to run a little beefier switch than this. So honestly, I'd probably recommend, if you're using these motors, to run a MOSFET and definitely a beefy battery. I think the stall current for 2 of these is like 90 amps, something like that. So that's going to be, to cover that, you're going to need a pretty good size 3S LiPo. But we will go ahead and wire this thing up, install all this stuff. And one thing before I do that, these do come with spacers, which is really cool because you do need those spacers to work with worker cages. Now I believe this is going to be the same as all other worker cages, but if you're using a ball bearing motor like this, like a Neo Rhino or like a Neo Hellcat, a Fang Revamped, or a Kraken that has that extra, you know, little area, little height there, you need a spacer so it will fit properly in here and the wheels will go far enough down and be centered properly. So that's cool that they include those. That is a very nice touch and I give them props for that. So let's go ahead and install these things, wire this thing up for a single flywheel setup, and see what she's got. Oh, those magnets are so strong. Alright, so I'm fairly certain that they do not send screws to mount your motors with, and that's a little bit upsetting because they probably should do that. And not to mention, you really need a little longer screw than you normally would because of this spacer. So you're going to have to source some longer screws. Luckily, I have some on hand, but yeah, you need a tad bit longer screw than normal just because of that spacer there. So we got that all wired up, and I went ahead and threw on the expanded battery door just to give you guys a look at that, since I totally missed that in my unboxing video. But as you can see, the depth is not very much there, so you're not going to really get too many more LiPos to fit into this than you would have without it. Unfortunately, it is definitely not big enough to fit this big battery right here, which is a pretty good sized battery to run these new worker motors that have a really high stall current. So you really want to protect yourself with a larger battery for those purposes. Went ahead and loaded up our 40 round mag with brand new AccuFake darts. This is a pretty cool magazine. I'm surprised how well they fed in there. Now I would highly recommend using new or mostly new darts. If you get some really mushy, soft, foamy darts, I could see this jamming up pretty badly. I will test with some used darts from the Naptown Nerf Club after we do this test, but I figured we'd start out with new ones and give it the benefit of the doubt right off the bat. So, and to get good chronograph readings with the flywheel setup here, which is the canted flywheel cage that is designed, the Gen 3 that's designed for this blaster with the wider bore, so those darts will feed in there a lot nicer. And we have those brand new worker motors that they came out with. So let's go ahead and throw the 3S LiPo in here and see how it works. All right, you guys, so I actually forgot to introduce Zombie Strike Man, and I picked this guy up just so we'd have something to shoot at, and I will do a more accuracy test. Now that's in quotations because it's not going to be like a for real accuracy test, because obviously we're outdoors, it's windy unfortunately, but at least we have a target to shoot at so you can kind of see how accurate it is. And given this is a canted cage with a shortened piece of that worker aluminum barrel, because I like to make it shorter than what they send, so I did shorten that up so it's just under a dart length from when the darts leave the flywheels there. Went ahead and put in our 3S LiPo, so let's take some shots over the chronograph and see what kind of performance we're getting and see how well this magazine works. 92, error, 102, 108, 88, 51, 68, 96, error, 68, 83, 101, 104, 101, 88, 105, 103, 83, 84, 96, error, woo, error, 92, 101, 88, 91. All right, we'll save the rest for a little bit of an accuracy test, but just shooting those over the chronograph, I could tell that when the darts aren't fed in quite straight, they don't come out quite straight, especially with a canted cage. I think that actually exaggerates the issue because of this 40 round magazine. At least that's just my initial opinion. We will take a few more shots with the Zombie Strike Man out there, but this is only a 43.5 millimeter cage, so it's not a high crush setup, so we're not getting super high numbers. And you know, we have those metal flywheels. You don't get a whole lot of surface area with the dart on those, so there's probably some dart slippage there. But I will have to test out these motors more. It's kind of hard to do a motor test with just one setup and only shooting a few darts, but they do seem like good motors, but you know, time will tell with that. So let's go ahead and throw Zombie Strike Man out there and fire off a few more of these darts. All right, so we're about 15 paces away from Zombie Strike Man there. This isn't the highest powered setup, so ranges aren't going to be obviously the best, and there's some barrel drag, obviously, you know, a lot more so than a Stripe because of all the room there in the front of the blaster. So let's go ahead and see what kind of accuracy this thing is getting. Interesting. Failed to fire. We look like we have a slight issue there. So that's the first one we've had a problem with. It looked like the one dart tried to skip ahead of the other and kind of jammed up there. So we'll disregard that and fire off a few more. That's the first problem I've had with the mag. So yeah, I think the mag is causing some issues with accuracy. Some of them, when they go in there straight, they shoot straight, it's fine. Some of them, when they don't go in there straight, that one just went straight into the ground, barely came out. Some of them fall short, some of them shoot left, and some of them shoot right. So yeah, I think honestly I'm blaming that a little bit on the flywheel setup and the magazine. I think just because it's a canted cage, I think it would do better if it's a straight cage. I'd really like to test this mag with a straight flywheel cage and maybe even like a 42 millimeter cage. I hope they make this you know, Gen 3 edition with that high crush setup that they just came out with. That would be interesting to test out, but I don't think the canted cage works great with the 40 round magazine. The 40 round magazine seems to work okay, but there was that one issue, and now we'll put some used darts in there and see how it works with that. All right, we have an array of different types of darts here. These are definitely not the most used darts. We actually have pretty darn nice darts at the Naptown Nerf Club. We add new ones to it all the time, and we take out the old ones. And actually, it's about time to take out some of the worn ones right now as it's coming to the end of the season. But we have some Koosh darts. This one's been in there a while because I haven't bought Koosh darts in a while, but that still doesn't look too bad. So we'll throw one of those in there. Of course, we got some purple AccuFakes. We'll put that in there. And actually, while I'm here, let me show you kind of how this thing staggers. It's pretty cool. So there's kind of a lip up, so that kind of is how it pushes the dart up to the top and keeps them kind of in a zigzag there. So all right, so loaded up an array of different types of darts in there, and I would say none of them are super worn, to be honest. And obviously it's pretty cool out this time of year in Indiana, so I have a feeling when it's warmer out and the foam is a little mushier, it could cause some more issues, but I can't really test that because I don't have that kind of climate right now. So we will go ahead and fire off what we got in here. Probably have about 30 darts. We'll see what it does. So shot those off really quickly. Seemed to do pretty darn well. I'm actually fairly impressed with this magazine. All right, you guys. So let's talk about what we just saw. Let's start with the 40 round magazine. This thing actually worked much better than I thought it would. I am overly impressed and surprised how well this worked, actually. I do think this compression spring they have in here, as it's a cylinder, is going to last a very long time. Probably going to hold up a lot longer than other worker magazines, or any magazine for that matter, that have the, you know, the I don't even know, the rectangular springy thing. So I think that's a good design choice. In terms of the look of the magazine, it's really not my favorite, but you know, to get something like this to work, it's got to be pretty simple. It can't be a banana mag or anything like that. It probably, you know, that would be really difficult to get to work well, obviously, but you know, it doesn't look too bad. It's just basically a box. So as long as you're okay with that, and you're okay with the occasional jam or, you know, issue, and you probably, I will have to do more testing, and I will test this with like the new Aurora cage or something else. Whatever I decide to put in when I go to a 3-stage setup, I will test this and see how well it works with just like a normal aftermarket strife cage, and not the one that's really designed to accept these 40 round mags. All in all, if you like the Dominator, I think the shell is gorgeous. I will do a more in-depth review on the shell when I get it all set up and I have more time to kind of play around with it. But this 40 round magazine is, I would say, probably about a B+, A- for me. You know, very impressed and surprised. So this, if you're not aware, will only work in the Dominator. This will not work with any other Nerf blaster or aftermarket blaster. It is a proprietary magazine that will only fit into the Dominator because it is much wider than a normal magazine. So that being said, you can use normal magazines with the Dominator. They give you pieces that go inside, so it will accept normal Nerf magazines if you don't want to use these. So that's that. So let's move on to the Canted Gen 3 worker cage. Alright, so the Canted Cage, they sent to me the Gen 3 that is got that wider bore, so it will kind of feed better with those 40 round magazines. You know, I think it's a decent design. I think the magazine fed well into the flywheel cage, but considering it's a canted cage, I don't think they really liked each other too much. It may be more the fault of the cage than the magazine of the, you know, wild shots, but I mean, I think it was a little bit of both, to be quite honest. But I'm not a huge fan of the canted cage with this setup, especially with this much faux barrel, because if it hits that going out, it's gonna, you know, we had one drop down really short, some other ones didn't go very far. We had some shoot way left and right, and it just didn't really seem to like it too much. And you know, the motors might not be the perfect setup for a canted cage either, as it's probably a little too high of RPMs for this setup, and it doesn't grip the dart super well. But all in all, I think I would really like to test this out without the canted cage, with a straight cage with a high crush setup, and I plan on doing so stay tuned for that. I think the cage is okay if you're looking for around 100 or so FPS. If you're wanting something for a multi-stage system, I would recommend going with the straight cage over the canted. That's just my recommendation. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. I would shorten that dart guide like I did, because making it as long as they send you is going to really reduce FPS even more. Alright, so the motors. I think the motors are very well made. I think they are a very nice motor, but I think they're a little overpriced. We can get just as good motors, if not better, and more suited for the hobby, being that these are a little too high of RPMs for a single flywheel setup, and you're going to get a lot more dart slippage, and actually it could actually hurt performance because of the RPMs being too high. The other thing that's a big disadvantage to me is they have a very high stall current rating, so you really need a very large battery. I mean, I think Fang revamps are about 26 or 28 amp stall, I can't remember exactly, and these are like 45 or 46 amp stall current, which is twice as much almost, and it's just, with two of those together, you're getting up over 90 amps, and it's you really need to be even above that to be on the safe level. So you're looking at you need 100 amps, and you need a very big battery. Anyways, I think the motors are good. They are a 132 motor, so they aren't going to fit quite as well in a lot of Nerf blasters as like a Fang Revamp or a Kraken motor. They're 130 size. They give you just as good, if not better, performance, and you don't have the shell cut. So, and they're cheaper. So I really don't see this being a popular choice over other motors on the market, given the price point. But if you can't get those motors, if you're like overseas and you can't get them, and this is your only option, I do think these are a good, well-made motor, and if you can get them for a decent price, I think they're fine. And I can't wait to put these into my second stage, because I think they're going to be actually perfect for that with the RPM. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for a full review on this with a 3-stage system coming up as soon as I can get that all figured out and where I want it. So smash that like button, please subscribe, and as always, peace out.